Intellectual property defines the legal protection given to creations, ideas, and innovations, and it establishes who controls how those creations are used, shared, and monetized. In security and technology environments, intellectual property considerations show up constantly, whether through software development, documentation, branding, or research output.
These protections exist to encourage innovation by giving creators enforceable rights, while also defining boundaries that others must respect.
Misunderstanding intellectual property law creates risk that is often invisible until it becomes expensive, because violations may sit unnoticed until audits, disputes, or litigation occur.
A solid grasp of intellectual property concepts allows organizations to protect what they create while avoiding unlawful use of what others own.
Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to the CISS books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Copyright protects original expression fixed in a tangible form, and this includes source code, documentation, designs, training materials, and media content. Protection arises automatically when the work is created without requiring registration, although registration can strengthen enforcement rights. Copyright does not protect ideas or concepts themselves, but rather the specific expression of those ideas, which is why two people can implement similar logic differently without infringement. In technology environments, copyright questions arise around copying code, reusing documentation, embedding media, and distributing software. Even internal use can raise issues if material was not lawfully acquired or if license terms are violated. Understanding copyright helps organizations respect boundaries while still collaborating and innovating.
Patents protect novel inventions, methods, and technical implementations, granting the holder exclusive rights for a limited period.
Unlike copyright, patents require formal application and approval, including disclosure of the invention and demonstration of novelty and non-obviousness.
Patents can cover software-related methods, hardware designs, and processes, depending on jurisdiction and subject matter rules.
From a security perspective, patents influence how technologies are developed, licensed, and deployed, especially in competitive markets.
Infringement can occur even without copying because patents protect functionality rather than expression.
Awareness of patent exposure is important when building or adopting technologies that implement specialized methods or processes. Trademarks protect brand identifiers, such as names, logos, symbols, and slogans that distinguish goods or services in the marketplace.
The purpose of trademark protection is to prevent confusion and to protect the goodwill associated with a brand.
In technology organizations, trademarks appear in product names, service offerings, documentation, and marketing materials.
Improper use of another organization's trademark can imply endorsement or affiliation that does not exist, creating legal and reputational risk.
Trademark rights can arise through use as well as registration, and enforcement focuses on likelihood of confusion rather than copying alone.
Clear guidelines around trademark use help organizations communicate accurately without creating unintended legal exposure. Trade secrets protect valuable confidential information that derives value from not being generally known and that is subject to reasonable efforts to maintain secrecy.
Examples include algorithms, internal processes, formulas, customer lists, and strategic plans.
Unlike other intellectual property forms, trade secrets do not expire as long as secrecy is maintained, but once secrecy is lost, protection is usually gone.
This places heavy emphasis on access control, confidentiality agreements, and disciplined handling practices. In security programs, trade secret protection intersects with data classification, insider risk management, and incident response. A failure to protect trade secrets adequately can eliminate legal protection, even if the information remains valuable. Licensing defines how software, content, and intellectual property may be used lawfully, and it is often where practical risk emerges.
A license is a legal agreement that grants specific rights while imposing conditions, limitations, and obligations.
Using software or content without complying with license terms can be just as risky as using it without permission at all.
Licenses may govern installation, copying, modification, redistribution, and even benchmarking or reverse engineering.
In complex environments, licensing risk accumulates quietly as components are reused and redistributed. Understanding licenses is essential for lawful operation and for avoiding downstream legal surprises.
Proprietary licenses are designed to retain control for the rights holder, and they typically restrict copying, modification, redistribution, and reverse engineering.
These licenses often limit use to specific environments, numbers of users, or defined purposes.
Violating proprietary license terms can result in termination of rights, financial penalties, or legal action.
Proprietary licensing models are common in commercial software and specialized tools, especially where intellectual property is a core business asset.
Security teams must be aware of these restrictions when deploying, integrating, or automating licensed products.
Failure to track and enforce license compliance can turn routine operations into contractual violations. Open-source licenses grant broad rights to use, modify, and distribute software, but they do so under defined conditions that must be respected. These licenses enable collaboration and innovation by reducing barriers to use, but they are not a free-for-all. Conditions may include attribution requirements, inclusion of license notices, or disclosure of source code under certain circumstances. Open-source software is deeply embedded in modern systems, making license awareness a practical necessity rather than a legal niche. Treating open source as risk-free because it is freely available is a common and costly mistake.
Proper understanding allows organizations to benefit from open source while honoring legal obligations.
Copyleft licenses represent a subset of open-source licenses that require derivative works to be distributed under the same or similar license terms.
This requirement is designed to preserve openness by preventing downstream restriction of shared code.
For organizations, copyleft obligations can affect distribution models, intellectual property strategy, and product architecture.
Incorporating copyleft licensed code into proprietary products can impose disclosure obligations that conflict with business goals.
Understanding when copyleft is triggered and how it propagates is essential for informed design decisions.
Clear guidance prevents accidental contamination of proprietary codebases with incompatible obligations.
Permissive licenses allow broader reuse with fewer conditions, typically requiring attribution and preservation of notices. These licenses are often preferred in commercial environments because they minimize downstream obligations while still respecting authorship.
Permissive licensing enables integration into proprietary systems without forcing disclosure of derivative works. However, even permissive licenses impose obligations, and ignoring attribution or notice requirements can still constitute non-compliance.
Organizations must track license terms accurately rather than relying on assumptions about permissiveness. Responsible use of permissive licenses supports innovation while maintaining legal hygiene. Compliance with intellectual property and licensing obligations requires tracking components, versions, notices, and distribution conditions across systems. This is challenging because modern software stacks include hundreds or thousands of components sourced from multiple origins. Effective compliance depends on inventory, documentation, and review processes that keep pace with change. Distribution conditions matter because obligations may change when software is shared externally versus used internally. Notices must be preserved accurately to meet attribution requirements. Without disciplined tracking, Organizations often discover violations only during audits, transactions, or disputes when remediation is most expensive. Violations of intellectual property or licensing terms create legal exposure that can include injunctions, damages, contract termination, and reputational harm. Injunctions can force organizations to stop using or distributing critical systems, creating operational disruption. Damages and settlements can be significant, especially when violations are widespread or prolonged. Contract termination can eliminate access to essential tools or services, forcing emergency replacement. Reputational harm undermines trust with customers, partners, and regulators. These consequences often arise not from malicious intent, but from poor visibility and governance. Policies play a key role by governing acceptable software use, code reuse, and contribution practices within the organization. Policies clarify which licenses are acceptable, which require review, and which are prohibited. They also define processes for introducing new components, contributing to external projects, and sharing internally developed code. Clear policies reduce ambiguity for developers, engineers, and administrators making daily decisions. They also support consistent enforcement and defensible compliance positions. When policies are aligned with legal guidance and business strategy, they prevent ad hoc decisions from creating systemic risk.
In conclusion, intellectual property and licensing rules shape how creations are lawfully protected, shared, and used across technology environments.
Copyright, patents, trademarks, and trade secrets each protect different aspects of innovation, requiring different controls and awareness.
Licensing terms translate those rights into practical permissions and obligations that directly affect operations.
Open source and proprietary models offer different benefits and risks, both requiring disciplined compliance.
Tracking, documentation, and policy enforcement transform intellectual property from an abstract legal concern into a managed operational reality. When organizations respect these rules consistently, they protect their own innovations while avoiding costly and disruptive violations.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.